Oh yes, I'm speaking about speaking again, but today with a twist. Because you see, from presentation skills to content to strategy to confidence and how you use your voice and body language, there's a whole lot more to speaking than just getting and giving a talk. Hey there, I'm Nafissa Shireen, success coach and business strategist for entrepreneurs, and welcome to Living Forward TV, where we help you to create a thriving business you absolutely love all around your personal freedom. Now, if you've been in my world for any length of time, you know that I am a huge fan of speaking to grow your business. And taking it one step further, I'm also a big fan of effective communication and presentation skills within your company to create engagement, to create buy-in at all levels, and to build your brand from the inside out. Yet, so many entrepreneurs and so many executives shy away from public speaking of any kind because it's uncomfortable and they're not sure how to do it. And that's why I'm so excited about our guest today, Rosemarie Barnes. Now, I'm going to start with her formal bio first. Rosemarie is an international speaker, best-selling author, and executive presentation trainer. She leads others to speak to engage and speak to succeed. She holds degrees in education, music, and drama from a number of Canadian universities. And through her company, Confident Stages, she offers keynote addresses and breakout sessions on a range of topics such as bridging the generation gaps in the 21st century, personal, professional, and corporate reinvention. And as an executive presentation trainer, Rosemarie works with content, presentation, and delivery skills and uses her vocal production finesse to empower speakers of all kinds to connect with their audiences with maximum impact and influence. Now that I've gone through the formal stuff, I really want to go to the informal bio, the Rosemarie that I know personally. If you haven't seen Rosemarie speak, oh my goodness, you need to. She is so powerful, so engaging, and she passionately cares about your success as a speaker and presenter. And she's going to help you overcome any stage fright. In fact, just before we started here, she was helping me calm some jitters. So Rosemarie, welcome to Living Forward TV.
Thank you, Nafissa. It is a delight to be here.
I am so happy and honored that you made the trek over here. I know you had to travel to come to be on our show today. And I really have been wanting to have you here because I mean, as I said, I'm a fan of speaking, and a lot of people don't put speaking forward in their business because they're nervous. So having you here is such a privilege for our viewers. And before we get into the meat of the content, I want to ask you what I ask every guest, and that is, what does living forward mean to you?
Living forward means always, always, always enjoying exactly what you're doing now, but always thinking about, and where will that take me? Where will that take me? Where will that take me? Living forward means don't shy away from whatever is in your path or presented to you as a gift. Accept, grow, keep going. It's not over till it's over.
No, it isn't. Now, before we get into the meat and the juice of speaking and presentation skills, I want to talk a little bit about you. Yes. What led you to create Confident Stages?
Everything I've ever done in my whole life has been about communicating. I said that strangely. Communicating, that's important. You see, I'm a speaker. I speak well. Whether I was singing, whether I was teaching band, heaven help me, whether I was teaching English, I am a grammar Nazi, no matter what I was doing, it was about communicating. Without the confidence to go forward and speak the brilliance that you're hiding in there, your brilliance remains a mystery. Therefore, the confident part comes in from attacking that which is holding you back. You see, confidence doesn't come from being successful. Being continually successful just leads to complacency. Confidence comes from navigating through trial, tribulation, and problems. Once you can navigate your way out of even failure, you become confident. The second biggest fear of humankind is public speaking. Therefore, if you can master that, if you can conquer that demon, what else can you not do?
Good point. I mean, I love speaking. Although I tend to sometimes get a little flustered in front of the camera, but that's still a form of speaking. I'm curious about what you found, because I mean, I know you work with executives, you work with entrepreneurs, you've worked with actors, all kinds of people wanting to take the stage, and there's different levels of comfort, right? I mean, obviously, an actor wants to get on stage and they want to get good at their craft. That's a different mindset than somebody who is not doing what they need to do to get out and go speak and market their business because they're afraid. So they'll come to you for help with that. And I know a lot of my viewers and my audience are entrepreneurs, and we do have some executives watching as well, where they're thinking, yeah, I know I need to speak, but I'm too afraid to get on stage. So what have you found are some of the common themes and the common fears that face people that's not true, right? It's just going on in their mind. What are they telling themselves, and because I'm sure you might be telling yourself the same thing, and what would you like to tell them?
The biggest fear that I've found people face when they have to address a group of people is that they are going to forget what they had to say, and they're going to end up standing there looking a fool. No one wants to look foolish. They therefore resort to reading the script, and we all know how scintillating those can be. Or they revert to the ever-powerful, yet not really effective PowerPoint. And they turn their PowerPoints into the presentation. If you're doing that, mail it in and spare everyone a lot of wasted time. But they rely on those things purely because they are afraid they're going to forget. Therefore, if you create a template to start with that tells you exactly what leads to what leads to what leads to what, then half that fear is gone. Now, here's the other thing. Fear causes adrenaline. We're going to have fun in this person's body now. The trick is that adrenaline leads to chest breathing. That kind of breathing is only good if you're a very hot dog on a summer day or you're giving birth. And that's not the regular circumstances. In order to breathe, to be a speaker, you have to speak the way singers create sound. That means belly breathing. We've all seen infants. When they breathe, their whole body breathes. That's because they're breathing down low. What that does is it ensures that you are getting sufficient oxygen and it's being shared all over, including the brain. You see, when we chest breathe, it ignites the adrenaline to burst into full form so that you can rush out and do all these incredible feats. What it does to do that is it strips the oxygen out of your brain and sends it to your muscles. This is why when people lift that burning car off that baby, they don't remember doing it.
Okay.
So one of the tricks to make sure your brain is in fully functional condition is to know how to breathe. It sounds ridiculous. That's the first thing we did when we came into this world. But as soon as fear comes into it, we cook our own goose.
And so that's one of the things we help people really with, first of all, is to get that breathing. And I've been through some of those exercises. They can be a little uncomfortable. And really, it's about letting go, too, when you're learning to do that. You have to be able to be willing to become vulnerable just learning how to do some of these exercises. And I imagine that's also going to help on stage because it's all about being vulnerable as well when you put yourself in front of a crowd of people because you don't know how they're going to react.
It's true. It's true. The other thing that you can do, you see, most of the fear finds itself into your body in physiological ways. When you are fearful, you breathe oddly. But when you are fearful, you also begin to shake and you need to move. And you've got all this excess energy caused by the adrenaline. So what you find are speakers that wander about on the stage like a caged animal, or they're clicking pens or other things, whether they're in the boardroom or on a performance space, doesn't matter. And that's nothing more than energy dissipating, nervous energy that we can't get rid of. There's something that you can do. Your audience is going to think I'm out of my mind, and maybe that's true. But the point is,
if it works, that's all that matters.
There you go.
Right?
One of the ways to control all of it is to tighten your cheeks. Not these ones.
Okay, we do all kinds of things here on Living Forward TV.
By tightening the glutes, and I mean
rock hard
glutes,
guys.
but leaving everything else relaxed, you now have activated your core.
Okay.
Speaking is a full body activity. By activating your core, you don't have to worry about all that, and it is nonsense, by the way, about tightening that diaphragm to within an inch of its life. You can't think of all of those things when you're up there giving a presentation.
No, you can't.
You can't think about projection, and you can't think about body language. It's too much. Tightening your alternate cheeks takes care of all of that for you.
So you just have to remember to clench. That's it, right?
That's right.
So that's awesome. I love that, and I know we've been to. We're going to get to this in a second. I've heard you speak a few times, and as I've said, if you haven't heard Rosemarie speak, you need to. And part of the reason your talks are so fun is you're speaking about speaking, and you give us some of these exercises that we can all get up and do as an audience. And you've got some really unusual keynote topics, right? Because usually when we go to hear a talk, it's about, especially as entrepreneurs or as business owners, about building your brand, building your team, building, things that our left brain seems to think of a little bit more. And your talks about presentation skills and about bridging the communication gap are really interesting topics. And I want to explore, first of all, before we get into the presentation skills, the one about bridging the communication gap in 21st century business. How does that communication gap and presentation skills and speaking all tie in? Because when you explained it to me, I was really blown away. Like, wow, this is a real circle here that I think a lot of businesses don't necessarily pay attention to, but really make a difference. And what we were saying earlier in the intro, this is about creating buy-in and engagement at all levels and building that brand from the inside out. What is all that? Tell me about that and what you speak about with that.
Every generation is behaving exactly as they should be. Let me say that out front. I'm pretty much tired of millennial bashing. Millennials are brilliant, absolutely stunningly brilliant. They have trouble saying so. They like I went to the mall, and you want to join. How effective is that in communication? However, I began to think that this was a millennial problem, a new generation problem, until I started examining the people that they're looking to as role models. Imagine my amaze when I discovered that while most executives believe that they speak well, that's not always the case, especially to reach our younger people. Our society has gotten less formal.
Yes.
Our language has become less formal with it. In business, it's not okay to do street language. It's not okay to speak too formally either. The communication gap comes in because we have traditionally left-brained business people now trying to communicate with more and more predominantly right-brained people because of a variety of influences, and I cover that in my book, Plug.
We'll link to it below.
And so what you've got is a round peg in a square hole. Mm-hmm. Because they can't communicate, the brilliance on either way is not shared. If you want your employees to stay, from millennial and younger, they need to know they're part of the whole. And
you need to know how they hear and how they communicate. And this is just such a theme for me in my life. I mean, as you know, I'm into horsemanship and natural horsemanship, and there's different opinions in the horse world on how to communicate with horses or any animal, right? But I'm of the opinion that if they don't understand you, it's my fault. It's not about showing who's boss. It's about how can I show up more effective? Me as the leader here in the relationship, I have the responsibility to make sure they understand me, right?
That's the speaker's job.
Yeah.
Always. It's not the audience's fault if they don't get the message. It's the speaker's dilemma to reach right-brained, left-brained, younger, older, no matter. It's the speaker's job to make sure that the information is presented.
And what you're saying here, and this is a really important point, I think, is that a speaker is not just the person up on stage.
No.
Right? If we're talking to people, we're the speaker.
And it's the speaker's job to connect with the audience, not the other way around. It doesn't matter what you say. It only matters what they hear. It doesn't matter how passionate you are on the subject. If they're hearing blasé, then it's the speaker that has to change because the audience won't.
Exactly.
An audience of general public includes everybody. How are you presenting the material so that you're reaching not only the different ages, stages, etc., but what's their learning style? Are they auditory? Are they kinesthetic? Are they visual? Are they... And as a speaker, you have to reach them all.
Yes, and that takes planning and foresight, right? I mean, and that's something even as a coach, what we pay close attention to when we're working with our clients is, are they auditory, visual, or kinesthetic? Like, because if somebody's using language like, do you hear me? Then we have to use words that they'll hear in, or do you see it? Or are you feeling me? And those are clues that people give us to how they communicate, right? And if we're paying attention, we can adapt.
Absolutely.
And the one who can adapt and the one who can be heard is the one that's going to, it's not about winning and losing, but it is the one that's going to win. It's the one who will affect the most change, right? And if we're waiting, I think, for somebody to communicate to us in the way we want to be communicated to, well, then they're going to take the lead. They're going to be the leader. So always. I think if this is so important as leaders of our business, and whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a corporate executive, really thinking about how you show up, is it working? I mean, I've had a corporate career and now I'm an entrepreneur as well. And I'm always asking myself, did that land right? Did it come across the right way? Did it come across in the way that I spoke their language? And it's not about being right. It's about getting the job done. It's about being effective, right?
The companies with the best internal communications win.
Yes.
Every time. Because then you've got engagement, which means that they're putting more effort into their work, which means you're getting better outcome. Here it is in a nutshell. I can work it back for you if you like. The companies that have communication skills down pat make more money.
Exactly.
Always. This leads to that to the other, and we can get into all of that if you like. But the short form is that the powers in today's business need to understand that our younger generations will not tolerate the old pyramid hierarchy of business. They're working at King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Mm-hmm. Every voice needs to be heard. And when you're talking to our younger generations, they either are heard or they walk. How much does that cost?
A lot. I've been in human resources. It costs a lot to replace a team member.
It is much less costly to retain your employees than to recruit employees. And the biggest reason people complain about anything, work, home life, love life, you're not listening to me. One of the biggest things about speaking is knowing how to listen.
Knowing how to listen so that you can communicate. So now tell me a little bit about, because what I love about you is you have these two aspects to how you help people communicate, right? So this is an important one, as we talked about, like the internal speaking within the organization, but still speaking publicly is a big part of what you do as a keynote speaker and training people to be keynote speakers. So you have another talk that you speak a lot about, and would you like to tell us a little bit about that and how that talk came to be?
I have many talks, of which
it was the one on confidence and was personal confidence.
Personal, professional, and corporate reinvention.
That was the one. Yes,
right. We'll get into that one. The world she be a changing man. You can either keep up or get off the boat. The idea that if it's not fixed, if it's not broke, don't fix it, used to work. Today, that simply doesn't. Now, what happens when your company starts to go into decline? What happens when your relationships start to fall into decline? What happens when the entire corporation is in need of a reinvention? Well, we have two choices. We can either, when faced with change, big change, we have three choices. We can either take it, leave it, or change it again. We can take the changes, accept them, absorb them, and carry on. We can leave it, refuse participation in it, it's not existing. Well, that works to some degree. Or we can change the change. We always have the possibility. We run our lives like with an internal GPS. Now, when we take a wrong turn, whether it's in your personal, corporate, or business life, when we take a wrong turn when we're driving the car, the GPS does not stand up on the seat, go red and blue saying, you messed up. The GPS doesn't do that.
Yeah.
We do it to ourselves, though. The GPS calmly and quietly says, recalculating, and figures out a new path to get us where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
We as people need to do that too. So instead of going off the rails because something has changed, examine it. Examine why the change is your issue. And very often, you will be surprised to learn that it's a matter of confidence and fear. The GPS won't get you where you need to go. It has to be you with your foot on the accelerator. If you are in charge and proactive about continually looking for new ways to improve the situation, then improve sounds a whole lot better than change.
Yes.
Adapt sounds a whole lot better than change. Those words don't fire up don't change things on me, it's working. That kind of confidence comes from knowing who you are and what you value. Now, we've heard this over and over about every aspect of our lives. Know who you are, know what you value. The trick is not to just know what you're valuing, but to put it in action and let it guide you. My daughter at the moment, my daughter is an earth mother. It's her calling, and she's brilliant. Anything that is lonely, hurt, sick, finds its way to her door. At this moment, Ariel is raising a crow.
A crow.
Said crow came to their house when her daughters brought it home with eggs still stuck on it.
Oh.
Now, if you've ever seen a brand new crow, they are nasty looking creatures, no feathers, huge beak, cawing like crazy, and this bird was going to die. Now, Ariel's values meant she had to try and help this crow. The values made the decision for her. So they named it Russell. So they have Russell Crow flying freely about their house. And it has adopted my daughter as mom, and it is a part of their family. Well, consider that for the business world. When you know what you value, you can speak your values.
Yes.
You can add the confidence to what you speak.
Mm-hmm.
And you have no difficulty restating it, representing it, repositioning it so that all the ears can hear it.
And also it gets really, when you have the values that clear, as you said, it's decision making. It gets really easy, value-based decision making. And once everyone's on board with that, it suddenly doesn't, especially when you're dealing with a flatter level type of organization, instead of people feeling like a decision was made for them, when we all sit down and talk about the values, how does this fit within our values, creates a lot more buy-in as well, because it's like, well, this is one of our values. I remember hearing a talk by the owner of a salon or a spa a few years ago, and they create a product, and they were provided, and one of their values as a company was to provide a unique experience. And they were provided with some opportunity. It was a really big one that was going to create, I think, more of a mass market opportunity for them. And, I remember her saying this, and it was quite striking to me in that talk where she said, we could have really easily been distracted by that, by the numbers. We went back to our values of create a unique experience. We would not be creating one. And the entire team was okay with it because we came back to the value.
Yes.
And that was very powerful to know that. And, we have our values here at Living Forward, and we make decisions based on our values, and when I was in our corporate world, one of the best things we did as a team was come up with values because everybody then bought in.
Absolutely.
And they buy into the decisions. And it's easier to hold other people accountable without hard feelings and say, hey, how does that fit in with our values, right? So I think that's really, really important. Rosemary, one of the other things I want to talk about too, and I just want to geek out a little bit on the speaking part, like
Okay.
the stage part, if you're okay with that. And you and I collaborated on a training, and I'm going to link to that below because it's really, really good. On just a few tips that you could give, because a good part of our audience is entrepreneurs who need to speak, who need to get on stage to grow their business. What are, if we could maybe talk about some of the tips, we won't go into all the detail, you'll have to get it below, but just some of the tips that they can think about when they get on stage, when you talk about content strategy, how to present yourself on stage. What are some tips you could give our audience today that would help them communicate their message and connect with their ideal client?
The very first thing that we have to know as speakers is that we try and give too much value, and we open the fire hose on our listeners. The general population can absorb 3 things at one sitting, and only 3 things. There's a reason for the 3 little bears and the 3 billy goats gruff and the 3, the 3, the 3, the 3. Therefore, when you are speaking, 3. The number of the counting is 3. So you use your hand.
I love that. You always say, talk to the hand.
Talk to the hand. This is your introduction. This is your closing and your call to action. This is topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. If it's a very long presentation, within topic 1, you can have 3 mini points. No more. This one is the most important thing. People remember what they hear first, but they remember what they hear last best. Therefore, if you have a weaker one or a connecting one, that's in the middle. So you look at your hand. Now, we can all remember introduction, closing, and topic 1, 2, 3. That said, what happens and how we give it falls into this category. The same way as I just did. Each of these now has 5 little fingers. You have an introduction, you have 3 topics possible, and a closing. You don't have to have 3. You then segue in between. That's it. That's how you create everything from an elevator pitch to a 50-minute keynote to a 2-day workshop. That's how it works. Talk to the hand.
Because if you spray them with too much information, they don't remember it, they get frustrated, they feel overwhelmed, or they're full and they don't need to take it any further with you, and then they don't remember it after.
And here's the thing. You try and give them too much information and they become frustrated. When people are frustrated, they tend to feel a little bit, why didn't I get that? They feel a little dumb. They don't like feeling dumb. So guess who they blame?
The speaker.
You,
was a bad talk
on the stage,
yeah.
Because you made them feel dumb. How much value have you been to them by giving them too much value?
I know. And it's funny, and this is a real important mindset piece, because I think, we want to provide value, and so our insecurities will pop up saying, you have to give, you have to give, you have to give. And I remember I had a mentor once saying, you don't need to tell them everything you know, and you don't need to give them everything they need, right? You're going to not give them a good experience if you do that.
That's exactly right.
And yet we fight ourselves thinking, I gotta give, realizing, no, you need to serve. And how you serve is speak in a way that they can understand.
Exactly. And they will not remember more than 3 things. I absolutely guarantee it. The other thing that you don't want to do is data dump. Consider, I can tell you, and our people in finance are wonderful people, Numbers are their world. So they try and share their passion with numbers.
Geologists do that too.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
The trick is that you have to take your numbers and put them into a format that people will remember, understand. That is the power of story.
Mm-hmm.
You see, in each of these topics, you introduce it, you explain it, and you illustrate it. This illustration can be your PowerPoint picture, could be a short video. It can be the story. And people remember stories because of how it makes them feel. Numbers on their own don't make anyone feel anything.
And what's beautiful about stories is you don't need to worry about memorizing it because you know your story, right? So if you don't get the right word or the exact right thing or you miss something, you still know your story and you know how to tell it. And it comes across a lot more genuine and engaging because it's
Real.
It's real. Like, it's not this memorized talk and a bunch of PowerPoints, and you get the attention on you. When I first was taking speaking coaching, and it was before I met you, and the coach that I had at that time, he's like, I want you to get rid of your PowerPoints. I'm like, you want me to what?
Take my left arm instead, please.
You want me to what, right? But he was right. He says, well, every time you point them up there, they're not looking at you, and then you're not connecting anymore. And that was a really powerful thing for me to think about, right? And that's why I love when you talk about story, you don't need anything because it's your story and people relate to stories.
I very often do keynote presentations with no PowerPoint.
I don't think I've
all.
ever seen you use a PowerPoint. Sometimes I don't think you've even used a microphone because your voice projects so beautifully.
Well, and the more natural it is, the more naturally it's received.
Yes.
That said, PowerPoint has a good purpose.
Yes.
One of the best is visual.
Yes.
A picture really is worth many more than 1,000 words.
Yes.
If I'm talking to students about how do you want to show up? Do you want to show up businesslike, attitude, I'm the boss? Or do you want to show up as the friendly puppy that wants to play? Now, I can talk about that forever. Instead, I'll put up a picture of a guard dog, all business, no nonsense. And I'll put a picture up of a puppy Bichon Frise or pug.
Yeah. My pugs.
Your pugs.
Yes.
Which one do you want to show up as, or what do you want in the middle? What's your image for you?
Yeah.
Choose the image of how you want. There is a brilliant way of using PowerPoint.
Yes.
To read off PowerPoint when you're giving a presentation is the kiss of death.
Yeah, well, you turn your back to your audience, and people, it's hard to read that, right? And so there is a place for it, absolutely. And again, pictures. If you know your story, they'll work together, and I think that helps you lose a lot of fear because you do this and you know your story, and
right.
The beauty about that too, I think, is so what if you don't get it absolutely right? Because if you give the same talk, when I say absolutely right, like in your what you memorize, if you're giving a similar talk at different places, it's even more beautiful if it's not exactly the same thing, because then people learn something different, or there might be similar people in audiences. They can always take something different away.
Memorizing presentations is unuseful.
And it stresses you out as a speaker.
You're going to forget.
And
you go right back to that chest breathing, and therefore you do forget.
I remember seeing one speaker. She was quite animated. I think she spoke for like 90 minutes, and she had a little card on it, and it was the 5 things she wanted to talk about. And then she would look at it, put it down, and she'd go back and talk, right? And everyone forgave her for her quick look, but then she would go into what she wanted to talk about, right? And it was natural, it was honest, it was engaging.
I'm not saying that speakers shouldn't take up notes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. No, you take up whatever it is that makes you feel better.
Yes.
Just please don't read it and don't try and memorize it. Actors work for years. They work their whole lives to deliver words on paper to become truth.
Yeah.
Speakers are not trained actors. That said, they do need some performance acumen. They do need to know their way around the stage, whatever that may be, whether it's across a desk, 1-to-1, in a boardroom, 1 to a few, or whether it's 1 to 3,000 at a conference. You You need to communicate differently. Memorizing means that you're not taking their needs into account.
So, and that's a good tweetable. Memorizing is not communicating.
No.
Right? Really important.
When I do a presentation, I stand at the door and I welcome my guests in. And I shake their hand, thank them for coming, and ask them if there's something particularly they would like to get out of the presentation.
And that's something that I really took to. It helped me actually relax as a speaker.
Yes.
And what was really cool about that is it gets so much easier to connect with the audience and to take your material and make it apply to them. And even if you are only speaking to one or two people who you've met, you're actually speaking to the whole room at that point because you're connecting with somebody in that audience, right? That you've taken the time to get to know, and people feel more engaged. And it changes the talk, and that's perfect because
it's for them.
It's for them, and now you know the audience. So, Rosemarie, this has been so helpful and enlightening for me on a lot of things, and I'm sure for our audience as well, because from how we communicate within our company to how we represent our brand, there's so many different avenues of speaking, and I think it all really does sum up in the whole expression of presentation skills. It's one form of presentation skills or another, and it goes so much more than just taking, because there's formulas for how you should write your talk, but the formula is not going to work if you can't deliver it, right? And I think most people innately know that, and that's why entrepreneurs will shy away from getting up there because they don't know how to deliver it. So if somebody is struggling today, what's one thing that you would like to leave them with that they could do today to get themselves into that frame of mind that they can do this, that they can speak, that they can communicate effectively?
The first thing to remember is that by virtue of the fact that you're standing up in front of people, you are the expert. That doesn't mean you can toot your own horn and carry on like you're, the second coming. But it does mean that people are looking to you for wisdom, advice, whatever it is they came to hear you speak. Mm-hmm. They're already on your side. If you stand and deliver, and you stand and deliver the truth of it to the people that are there, they will really, really hold on to your words, but you must reach them through the heart. We make our decisions emotionally first and then rationalize them with our brain. If we can say our numbers are dropping, that's one thing. But if you say our numbers are dropping, and that means for you that. So the speaker's ultimate job is to take the information, and that's a good speaker. A great speaker takes that information, turns it around, and connects it to every person in the audience. What does this mean for you? The audience is there to answer their own top-of-mind problem. The audience is there to find out what's in it for me. Whether you're in a business, whether you're in a keynote, whether you are the MC at the local circus, answering the audience's question of what's in it for me means that they will like you, know you, and respect you, and continue to want to associate and do business with you.
So, Rosemarie, if somebody needs help with that, where can they find you?
Oh, well, they should www.confidencestages.com, rbarnes@confidencestages.com.
So thank you so much for coming today. And if you have more questions, you need more help, then I'd love to invite you to join me in the free Living Forward Facebook community. That's where I come to you live each week with after the episodes, and I take your questions personally. On episodes like today, when we do our after the episode, I'll also bring our guest in. All you have to do is go to livingforwardcommunity.com, click the Join Now button, and I'll see you on the inside.